recognize the need to do so when we apply ourselves to the task. Earlier on, I omitted a little bit about an environmental problem, which was a similar success with our creativity once it got acknowledged, which was the acid rain problem in the early 1980s. There was enough community involvement and fuss and pressure made by the Canadian and American people that both governments, the Canadian and the United States government, both passed laws simultaneously to limit acid-causing emissions to 50% on average at source within 10 years. There was a lot of resistance from industry while this was being debated. This will make us non-competitive, we'll go bankrupt, all the sort of complaints you might expect from a teenager asked to clean up his room. But when the laws were passed and it had to be done, people were assigned to the task and they learned what was known and developed some more techniques and figured out how to bring the acid-causing emissions down and reached the 50% reduction in 7 years, and went on to bring it down even further in the remaining 3 years of the program. We acknowledged the problem, we set ourselves the task, and we did it. The problem with that acid rain example is that because the human project is continuously expanding, we have almost twice as many sources now, so almost the same level of acid precipitation.
And I'd also add, unfortunately, a lot of it got exported to China, and that's a large part of why it reduced here too, I think.
That's a part of it. I'm not sure how much of that was happening.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. Empty factories are trying to get a job in manufacturing.
No, that's a good point. And
a lot of it just got exported everything.
I remember a comment by somebody around the time that was saying that some of those countries were under-polluted. And also they had low pollution standards, so that's true. It was part of how it was done.
So we have acid rain in China, now they do.
Yeah. They cleaned it up for the Olympics just for that period of time, and they liked it when it was clean. I have a friend I have a friend who used to make the plastic cases for electronic equipment, and there was a factory in China that worked on his stuff. He used to write Green Party policies in the 80s. Anyways, he went into business making these things, and he says that one of the industrial provinces, because most of their industries are just 4 or 5 provinces, one of them passed a bunch of environmental laws to bring down the pollution levels, and there was 100,000 factories that wouldn't comply with the law and were closed down. So they're now starting to try to deal with that. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, but for sure it's a global problem. We can't just slop the problems off on somebody else. But there's a remarkable capacity because we don't need a whole lot to survive. And if we acknowledge that and look at what we can do with our lives instead of ever accumulating more stuff, then we can reduce our impacts quite substantially. There's 3 steps that we could take that would bring our impact down to 10 or 20%. People were just overwhelmed by how much it would take to bring our CO2 emissions down to a safe level. That's what I pulled these together for. If we took our engineering expertise, our knowledge of how materials work and how to build things, and used it to make things durable and easily repaired, rather than to make them go obsolete and out of style, then that would be a huge saving. If we used our communication potential, instead of encouraging people to go for the latest style and dispense with the old stuff, and reclaim the value we used to have in things that were durable. Not long ago, if you had a piece of clothing or a tool that had belonged to a grandparent, that would have been your most prized possession. That would be a thing which was so well made, so useful, that it had survived for generations. And that was a very strong human value until we were persuaded that we really want the latest and the greatest, right, and throw it away. And that's how we dealt with our problem of how do you keep the economy growing. It's just by increasing waste. But if we were to reclaim that appreciation of durability, that would make a long way towards the living lightly on the earth. And the third one is this notion of looking for satisfaction in yourself rather than in stuff. And those 3 could bring us down to 10% easy. They would be very hard on the conventional economic system. But there's got to be more creative ways of dealing with mutual provision than ever increasing waste. I'm sure humans could come up with that if we can just sort of break this cycle. So how do we do that? How do we make that change take place? How does change take place in societies? We had last year the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of apartheid. Those were 2 huge, powerful institutions that seemed to dissolve in a matter of weeks. But it wasn't just the time that it was in the news. It was years before that people were talking. Change begins with a conversation. Something's not right here. Something else would be better. Maybe we could do it like this. Yeah, if we did that, we could. The conversation goes back and forth, and a vision of what might be better than what's existing develops in the minds of the population. And as that reaches a critical mass, then the structures, the physical structures of society shift. Hey. There's a fellow, R.H. Towney, who spent his entire life studying change in society, and what he observed was that the impetus to reform springs in every age from the realization of the contrast between the external order of society and the moral standards recognized as valid by the conscience or reason of the individual. So a lot of people are sort of, can get that we can't grow forever on this finite planet. Doesn't make sense. You know, the problems that it's causing, they don't feel good. But the external order of society is saying, well, let's just get this thing growing again, you know, go out and spend more and you know, all of that. And it's more and more people are sort of scratching their head. It doesn't make sense. I think a vast majority of the people know it doesn't make sense. And we need to get that catalytic process where it's clear that the value system has to shift. To give you a little idea of how important the basic value system of society is, imagine taking a bag full of tools and going into the wilderness with the intent of staying there by yourself for 2 years. What are the chances of coming out in good health? And that would be with tools that other people had made, with the knowledge of how to use them that you would learn from your society. Even the words and the concepts we think with, we learn from our society. A human being without a society is like a computer without an operating system. Tremendous potential, but if we don't know anything, if we have no one to cooperate with, we're toast. We can't do anything. A chipmunk, a baby chipmunk, has more survival potential than a human being without a society. But we're very successful in our communities, in our societies. So we want to belong. We want to belong very, very much. And the price of admission is to subscribe to the value system of the society. For the last 300 or 400 years, to be a good citizen, your job has been to earn and spend as much money as possible. Lately, to be a good citizen, if you could max out your credit card, stellar. Puts money into circulation and makes the economy grow. Enough people got burned with credit card debt in the last few years that that's already been, you know, it's not cool anymore. And the whole notion that our job is to consume, is to maximize the amount of stuff we buy and get rid of, is losing credibility. The grandchildren, when they're raising their families, are not going to look back at their elders and think, wow, you know, they spent so much stuff, they just, you know, was flowing through, we had 6 bags of garbage out front every day, every week. You know, they're going to say, how come I don't have the things that we need to take care of our kids? So what they're going to judge us on is, did we know how to live lightly? Did we know how to get satisfaction from our lives rather than from stuff? And did we manage the material world in a way that would serve their interest, that would recognize the needs of the children and grandchildren? It's a good way of remembering this value shift, and it's very apropos to the transition movement, as you'll see. But it's basically the story of the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. And we're really talking about the metamorphosis of society. What we'll be doing in 50 years' time is going to be so different from what we're doing now. It's not going to look like a bigger caterpillar, it's going to look like a butterfly. The caterpillar is a good parallel to industrial society because it spends its entire life collecting natural resources and growing. And then it comes to enough. We're a little fuzzy on enough as a society. But the caterpillar understands, and it goes into its cocoon. And when it emerges, it's a very different creature. They sip the nectar of flowers. They live very lightly. They're beautiful, which represents this incredible capacity we have to enjoy living. And the butterfly's purpose is the well-being of the next generation. So when we realize that our purpose is to live lightly, enjoy life, and to manage the material world in a rational way, when that becomes the value, then that's what people will feel they need to do to belong. That that's what they'll need to do to make our society strong so that we'll be secure. And indeed, that's what we need to do for our society to become secure. And in our millions and our billions following that value system, we will have a collective creativity equal in magnitude to these enormous problems that we're facing.